Jennifer Tuck, thanks for doing this. I'm Martin de Groot, and I'm doing this as a volunteer for the groups behind this. We're asking each of the candidates the same 6 questions, and this is the first one. All 8 of our municipal governments have committed to the Transform Waterloo Region strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050, with a 50% reduction by 2030. How will you, as a local representative, help our communities and businesses achieve this goal?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to answer these questions. So the Ontario Liberal platform was released on Monday, and it includes a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% from 2005 levels by 2030. So in line with the recommendations for the region. Further, it goes on to say that the entire province will be net zero by 2050, in line with the federal government's commitment as well. In order to help businesses and residents transition to more energy efficient products and to allow them to meet the emission reduction targets of 50% by 2030, the Liberal platform calls for grants and loans, a combination of both programs to help businesses transition. There'll be 100,000 grants available, non-repayable grants of up to $3,000 each that businesses will be able to access in order to make their operations more energy efficient and reduce any emissions that they have. We'll also update the building code to include energy efficient and climate resilient standards. So any new buildings being built will be held to a higher environmental standard.
Okay, how will your party meet the target of protecting 30% of Ontario's lands and waters by 2030, in keeping with Canada's international commitments?
I feel like you read our platform before you put these questions together, because the Ontario Liberal platform does call for protection of 30% of the land by 2030. It also further goes to expand provincial parks. There'll be 5 new provincial parks, and some provincial parks that are already existing will be enlarged. It also calls for more protection of the Greenbelt, working in conjunction with local communities, Indigenous communities, and farmers to do that as well. In addition to that, I guess I could also mention that we plan to plant 800 million new trees to increase our green tree canopy.
What will you do to address the need for mixed multi-use housing and walkable communities, and that new home construction is done sustainably and affordably?
Yeah, so again, the Liberal platform calls for 1.5 million new homes. Of that, I think 238,000 will be deeply affordable units. They'll work in conjunction with local communities, again, and municipalities, increase municipal opportunities for densification. Also, they're going to fund more transit. So we're working on expanding the Waterloo Ion LRT system from downtown Kitchener into Cambridge, as well as over the next 4 years, starting the construction required to bring two-way all-day GO service to Kitchener as well. There is also $100 million earmarked for communities annually to be spent on biking infrastructure. So whether that is separating bike lanes from traffic or including more biking trails, there'll be funding in place to do that as well.
And how will your party protect farmland and address the negative ecological effects of aggregate extraction?
So the platform, as I said, calls for expansion of the Greenbelt, which will also help in protecting additional farmland, and that will be done in consultation with local farmers. The platform also calls for supporting best practices in agriculture and maintaining the soil so that it can act as to maximize carbon reduction emissions, carbon emissions reductions. They will also strengthen the regulatory requirements around aggregate mining, so that that will be incorporated into the approval process prior to new mines being given the green light to operate as well. They're also giving more power to conservation authorities, which was reduced under the Ford government. Conservation authorities will also have the ability to protect floodplains, farmland, and other green spaces. Oh, and there's also a target. I'm sorry, I just wanted to add, there's also a target to reduce methane emissions by 50% as well.
BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and women are disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards such as landfills and industrial pollution. How will you address this environmental injustice?
Yeah, so the entire climate platform that the government has put forward will be looked through a equity lens. So equity in among persons of color, women, and other minorities or other marginalized communities will be part of the process when planning out future environmental goals and practices. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those are our 6 questions.
Can I add one thing that I forgot to talk about earlier? I should have mentioned also when talking about transit and walkable communities, there is also a platform commitment to reduce transit fares across Ontario to $1 until January 2024. So this is to get people back onto transit that may have left it due to COVID. It also is to entice new riders onto transit. So this will be province-wide, both municipal transit systems as well as the Ontario Northland Transit and other provincially run transit authorities. So I wanted to add that.
Very good. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.